Welcome to Beautifully Built, the podcast where we design more than spaces. We design lives that are big, bold, and beautifully built. I'm your host, Karen Otis-Webb, architect, author, and unapologetic life builder, forever curious about building with purpose, passion, and personal vision. This podcast is about the design of your life. Messy, meaningful, raw, and real. From relationships and reinvention to business, purpose, and everything in between. We're stripping it down to what really matters. You'll get the grit and the grace, the vision and the vulnerability, because a life worth living isn't found, it's built. Welcome back, everyone. I'm here with Laurie Kaye. She began her career in radio at KFRC AM San Francisco, for years the nation's greatest top 40 stations, where she started out as an intern and worked her way up to on-air reporter and news anchor, as well as at other radio stations, including WOW, I guess that's called WOW, in Omaha, and KING in Seattle. She wrote and co-produced numerous national radio rock specials, including the lengthy 14-hour show RKO Presents the Beatles, which was later internationally syndicated and expanded to 17 hours when she retitled it The Beatles from Liverpool to Legend. In June 1979, rock reporter Laurie Kaye and her RKO team interviewed Paul and Linda McCartney and their latest lineup of Wings in London. And then they were sent to New York to interview Yoko Ono and John Lennon at the Dakota on December 8, 1980, mere hours before John was shot and killed. Directly that tragic day, Laurie wrote the 3-hour international special John Lennon, The Man, the Memory, which featured the bulk of their incredible interview. After their time with John and Yoko ended, Laurie went outside the Dakota, and we're going to get into this part in our interview, but she was actually accosted by the creepy guy that eventually killed John Lennon. She recounts the full story to us. She has written a book. It is called Confessions of a Rock and Roll Name Dropper, My Life Leading Up to John Lennon's Last Interview, which is her memoir about her life as a Southern California girl with a troubled childhood who got into rock and roll before becoming a toddler thanks to a transistor radio. Thank you so much for being here. Nice to have you, Laurie.
Nice to be here, Karen. Thank you.
Great. So it's remarkable it seems, to have had kind of like the worst and the best day happen all in one for you. So before we get into really that fateful day, which I think changed, rock and roll and was a day that a lot of us remember, tell us a little about kind of your childhood, how you even got into radio, what an impact it had and how it all came about for you.
Well, being raised by a dysfunctional family from the time I was born sent me to listening to radio. Even before I was a toddler, I got a transistor radio with earplugs. So I spent basically all day and all night listening to AM rock radio stations in Los Angeles, KHJ and KRLA, and it was really cool. And I listened to everybody right off the bat, from Little Richard to Elvis Presley, and then finally the Beach Boys and the Beatles. And it was so cool. And that's what got me into rock and roll. And of course, getting into school and everything, I kept at it. And by the time I was in high school, I was listening to FM radio, and it was amazing. I had my own stereo because my dysfunctional family wouldn't let me listen to theirs. It was just great because that's how I ended up getting my career in radio. What happened was I won tickets to see the Rolling Stones. I'd never seen them before. This was while I was in high school, and they were doing a show called the Nicaragua Benefit after the big earthquake in Nicaragua. And of course, Mick Jagger's wife was Nicaraguan. So they were performing the Nicaragua Benefit, and I won tickets. And I went to go pick them up at KMET FM, the station, and I thought I'd just walk into the office and pick up the tickets and then go to the show that night. But they said, no, the disc jockey wants you in his booth to talk to you on the air. And it was B. Mitchell Reed, otherwise known as the Beamer. And I went in and I started talking to him. And he said, Laurie, with your voice, and your ability to talk, you should be on the air. You should consider this for your career. So at that point, my senior year in high school, I thought, that's what I'm going to do.
Oh,
I'm
that's
going to look
great.
for being on the radio. And I did several years
Yeah.
later. It worked out great.
What's interesting is so few people have that epiphany of what they want to do for their life and how to merge their, career with what they love. I had that at 16. I knew I wanted to be an architect. Every time I tell that story, people are like, "How did you know that young?" That's so great to hear that you did. And so you went after it at that point. So it all starts basically from winning tickets, which is great. What a great story. And then you went from there to study it, have an intern, etc., right?
Yes, and at first I have to say that the concert, the Rolling Stones Nicaragua benefit at the Forum here in Los Angeles,
Mm-hmm.
was incredible. It still is. I look back at it as one of the best concerts I've ever been to, and I've been to thousands of
Oh,
concerts,
I bet. Wow.
radio career and everything. And then what happened was I went to college in Santa Cruz. And while I was there, a lot of things happened. And one of the worst things was I had an accident and a big problem breaking an ankle and having problems. And they wanted to do surgery. And I was so scared and I didn't have money to pay for it or anything. So I asked if there was anything else I could do. And I was told, well, you could study Indonesian dance. That will help you. It will help your ankle. So I ended up moving to Bali to study
Oh
Balinese
my.
dance.
Okay,
Yeah,
who first told you you should do Balinese dance to help your ankle?
actually one of the doctors who
Oh
checked
my
me out.
goodness, how funny.
And
Okay.
yeah, and actually, well, they said what I could do was go to Berkeley, where they had Indonesian dance classes and everything. And I checked it out there. But then they said, well, you'll actually have a better time and more interest in doing it if you go to Bali. So I did. I
So
went to
you
Bali.
did. Oh
And it was
my.
incredible.
Okay.
And the cool thing about being there wasn't just doing my dance and everything, dance classes, but later when I interviewed John Lennon, hearing him talk about how much he loved staying on Bali himself. So that was just one of the things we had in common. It was really cool.
Oh,
And when
that's
I came
great.
back from Bali, I went to UC Berkeley as a journalism student, and I was there for just a couple months. And I was already writing articles for their campus newspaper and everything. And I was taking a class, and my professor said, Laurie, why are you taking a class? You already know how to write. You should go get an internship. You'll get a job right away, and you can quit school and start making money. So I did.
So you
I
did. Yeah.
found out there
Wow.
was an internship, the very first one available in the newsroom at KFRC on the radio. And I thought, wow. And this is the disc jockey, the beamer at KMET telling me I should be on the radio. And this is my professor telling me I should be doing news. It worked out great. And of course, I was
Right.
hired as the intern. And it was really cool because once the internship was over, I was hired shortly after to be their news editor and eventually became an on air newscaster as well
Yeah.
and do all the RKO rock radio specials and the bulk of their interviews. And the really cool thing was, as you mentioned before, the very first big rock radio special I did was the 14-hour RKO Presents the Beatles. And it was on reel to reel tape. And here's one of the episodes.
Oh
And it
wow.
was sent
Yeah.
all over the country to stations. And it was so popular, it was almost immediately internationally syndicated. So it would play all over the world. And we changed the name to the title I'd originally come up with, which was The Beatles from Liverpool to Legend, and
That's a
expanded it
great name.
to
Great name.
17 hours. So
Hmm.
having written and co produced it was super exciting. And then later, in January 1980, when I interviewed Beatles producer George Martin, he told me, Laurie, that was the best Beatles special. I listened to it twice in England, and it's amazing. And he was super friendly, and he autographed his biography for me, very
Yeah.
complimentary too. It was great.
I love that. What's so interesting is, on this podcast, we really dive into all the time that, to to have that beautiful life you want, where your passion and your purpose are well aligned, and and what you do for work really lights you up, that it's not found, it's built. You have to really create that life. And how interesting that certain pivots that you had, really by either a professor telling you or someone kind of giving you, that you were open to taking that, and what a difference that made, right? That it would have sent your, had that not happened, your life would have gone in a whole other direction possibly. So that's remarkable. I
Yes, and
love that.
because I was raised by a dysfunctional family, I didn't get any advice or
Mm,
actually any love from
right.
them in terms of what I wanted to do. So it was great to hear it from everybody else, including my friends' parents in school were very encouraging as well. So that made it much better.
Wow, that's great. I like that. Okay, so then let's get into this fateful day, which it's remarkable to me, really. That day, I would love for you to take me through that whole day. You can start really the day before, because then it seems like then you travel to then go see and interview John Lennon. But wherever you want to start with that for us, take us through that, what that whole day was like, because it was such a, not only a pivotal day in your life and so momentous, but really for the entire world.
Well, actually, what I want to start with
Hmm.
was the other Fab Four member interviews that I did,
Yes.
which
Okay.
was George Harrison, December of 1978, right after he'd gotten married and had their son. They'd had their son Danny, and he was really cool to talk to. And that was for the Beatles from Liverpool to Legend, and another special for RKO I was writing, the top 100 of the 70s that George had songs for, and that was thrilling. And then in June 1979, my RKO radio team and I, two guys, got sent to London to interview Paul and Linda McCartney and their latest lineup of Wings, which included the late, great Denny Lane. And it was just amazing. That was an
So you
incredible
were
interview.
really a Beatles, I mean, connoisseur. You knew a lot about them. It sounds like not only were they, kind of an icon, but you were a huge fan before even interviewing them.
Well, yes, I'd done so much research for
Hmm.
RKO Presents the Beatles and the Beatles from Liverpool to Legend. Plus, I had seen them as a little kid on the Ed Sullivan Show,
Oh, wow.
and also I'd seen them in concert at the Dodger Stadium. A friend of mine's mother in elementary school celebrated her daughter's birthday by buying her friends tickets to see the show. So
Oh,
that
pretty
was
great
really
mom.
great. Yeah, it was wonderful
Yeah.
because my mother certainly wouldn't have taken me.
Yeah.
She
Wow.
only listened to Frank Sinatra and nothing rock and roll.
I
So
see.
I had a lot of history with the Beatles and seen all their movies as a kid and everything. And so that was really wonderful. And then after the Paul McCartney interview, my RKO team was pretty much encouraged to be the only RKO, actually radio network interviewers for John and Yoko following the release of Double Fantasy, which was John's first album in several years. So that was really cool. We got sent to New York, and it was me and Dave Sholin, the co-interviewer, and Ron Hummel, our engineer producer, the Warner Brothers executive Bert Keane, who just passed away this past year, sadly. And we went to New York, and on the way over on the plane, I was writing the questions to ask, and we had been
Hmm.
told by the record company and the publicist, do not ask John about the Beatles. Do not talk about
Really?
the past.
Yeah.
This is all about his current situation and possible future. Never talk about the past. So I made sure we didn't in the questions, but thank God John ended up bringing it up himself.
Oh,
And
that's good. Yeah.
that was December 8th, 1980, which was sadly his last day on the planet. And of course, his last interview at all. And it
Right.
ended mere hours but before he was shot and killed, which still makes it the best and the worst day of my life.
Right. Oh, I bet. So all of you, first of all, what does RKO stand for? Is it
Um,
just the name of the radio station?
yeah, it's the name of the
Okay.
radio network
Yeah.
and station, which is not in business anymore.
Okay. So you arrive in New York to go, and Dakota, that's the apartments that they lived in. Is that right?
Correct. And
Okay.
we went and we stayed at the hotel where the Beatles had stayed when they first came to be on the Elvis Presley show. That was really exciting, walking around that, and then going to the Dakota the next mid-morning and meeting up with their assistants. And they said that John and Yoko were doing their photo shoot for Rolling Stone magazine. And I said, okay, great. And we got taken to their private office, which was incredibly cool and huge white shag carpeting and this amazing coffee table with a love seat in front of it, which I sat in because I totally dug the coffee table, which had big, like, metal snakes crawling up the legs of the coffee
Oh, the
table.
legs of the coffee table. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And
okay.
Yoko came in first and started talking to us because she said John was still continuing a solo photo shoot after they'd done their double one together. And that was really great to talk to
So
her.
tell me a little bit, what was she like when she first walked in? I mean, you'd never met her yet, right?
I've never met her, but she was super friendly. And she was excited to see me because I was the only female there other than the three guys I was with. And she was so excited that I brought with me my copy of her book, Grapefruit, that I had.
Wow, there
She
it
said,
is. Mm-hmm.
oh my God, John and I haven't seen that edition for years. I'm so excited. I can't wait to autograph it. And not only did she autograph it for me, but John did too. He begged me to let him
Oh, how
autograph
neat. Yeah.
because he had done the introduction for it, the forward, and that was really cool too. And I put the autographs in my book as well, so everybody can say to themselves, wow, we have
You can actually
John and
see it.
Yoko
Yes.
autograph.
That
And
is
this is my
great.
book.
And so for those listening, we're also on YouTube, so you can see all of this and see Laurie showing me the book and the
Yes.
autograph
And here's the
and the
autograph from
images.
John and
And there
Yoko
it
in my
is.
book.
Wow. Fantastic. So, okay, so
Yes.
you arrive there and Yoko comes in, just casual, very casual, or was it very formal? How was it when she first walked in?
She was totally friendly to me and just talking about relationships and how exciting it was to do double fantasy with John, and saying that John was the one who helped her go from being an avant-garde art snob to being into pop media. So that's how she was able to write songs for double fantasy and do music that they'd created before.
Yeah, because
Really
she
thrilled
had
about
been, when they first met, she was an artist, right? And it was at an opening of her artwork at a gallery, right? So did she
Right.
have musical talent before all this or not?
Well, apparently she did, because when John and Yoko first went out on their first date after about 18 months to 2 years after meeting, John told us the whole story about how he and Yoko recorded their very first music together. And he did an impression of her singing. He's saying he really liked it and he thought she was great. And it's just incredible because Yoko started talking right away about how she and John both felt that dialogue was necessary again between all men and women to improve their relationships. And that's what double fantasy was about. Their songs that improved not only their relationship with each other, but were recorded to encourage other couples to improve their relationship too. And so that led to the double fantasy songs and how they wrote each of theirs for each other. It was amazing.
That's very neat. Wow. So it was, I mean, their relationship was pretty controversial at the time and had really brought up I think historically still has, there are people, those that blame, that relationship for breaking up the Beatles. What's your thought on that?
Not true.
Not true.
And
Right.
John
Okay.
actually said, no, it
Really?
has nothing to do with it. Yes. So he pointed out that the Beatles had broken up before that, that Yoko had nothing to do with it. And the cool thing is that when John came in after finishing his shoot, and Yoko and I had been talking, and the guys also, and I was so excited to hear her talk about relationships because I hadn't had any great laughs. And all of a sudden, the private office door opened, and glasses stuck out, and a nose stuck out. And just to be funny, I took off my microphone and I looked at the door and said, can't you tell we're in the middle of an interview? And, and sat down right next to me on the love seat, right in front of the coffee table, and was so friendly. And every time I asked a question or mentioned something, he was so encouraging and complimentary and validating. And he would push down his glasses and look at me and say, "Yes,
Funny.
Laurie, exactly, love." And it was
Oh,
just an amazing interview.
how wonderful. It sounds like that, yeah, the energy between them and how they, interacted with you is amazing. So what are some of the things you talked about at that interview?
Well, the first, quite a bit actually, was about John and Yoko being together again and how it was the best time for him and being away from her was the worst time. And he said that he wasn't the one who left her, she was the one who got rid of him. So he
Wow.
was
Because they
so
were apart for what, like about 18 months? Is that right?
Yes. And he was so happy to be back because he said it was the worst time in his life
Wow.
being away from her. And he was just thrilled to have Sean. And so he talked about raising Sean, and our Warner Brothers executive, Bert, who was there, had a 5-year-old son too. So he, of course, was thrilled to be asking John questions about raising his son and how he did it and how did he take care of him. Was he going to kindergarten? And he wasn't.
Mm-hmm. He
John
was, he
didn't
was.
have him go to kindergarten. And that was really cool. So I just, after a while, kept thinking, it's time to talk about music, not kids
Right, right.
anymore. So I said, John, I want to ask you about getting the urge to make music again. And I emphasized it. And John burst in with his super loud, funny, and affectionate reply. Oh, it came over me all of a sudden, love. I didn't know what came over me. And
Interesting.
everyone started laughing while I reacted confidently to his endearing response, which was, I know, I said, like you were possessed. And he said, I was possessed by this rock and roll devil, you know? And we all
Funny.
started laughing again and again. And he said, was that your question? Politely. Did I interrupt you? And I said, no, you got it. I told him, and I was smiling like crazy as he and Yoko went on to discuss their work and the love that went into creating Double Fantasy. And then John suddenly said, I had, like, if you'll pardon the expression, a diarrhea of creativity, which of course
I
got
remember
us
reading that in your
laughing
book. Oh my goodness.
all
Yeah.
over again and again. And we kept discussing it. And John told us how he was in Bermuda in June in 1980 with Sean while Yoko was staying in the office in the Dakota doing the work. And he called her to sing and play songs that he was suddenly writing. And even while he was swimming, and he then got calls from her a couple hours later with her responding with songs, and they kept going back and forth. And when he came back, they kept doing more songs with each other and then ended up recording him. And that's how Double Fantasy came about.
Wow.
All of that was great. And then John started bringing up the Beatles too in his very first meetup with Paul McCartney, which was really exciting to hear about. And of course, he told the long story about his first meetup with Yoko and falling in love with her. And he described, which I have in my book, the first time they made love. And it was just really thrilling to hear about. I loved that interview.
Yeah. Why did they separate for a while? Why did they have those 18 months apart? Do you know?
Well, Yoko just felt it was time. She
Hmm.
just
Mm-hmm.
got that impression and didn't just suggest John leave, but actually basically threw him out and
Oh goodness.
sent
Yeah.
their assistant, May Pang, to spend time with him and be his girlfriend there, which she was. But John couldn't wait to come back, and he did, got Yoko pregnant, and was thrilled to have Sean with Joko.
Right. Right. So then, okay, wow. So then they've done this new album and they're talking about that work. How do you think his work, how would you describe the change in his work once he met her?
Well, he really wanted to utilize not only her voice, but her writing ability. And
Mm-hmm.
he even told us the story of when he did Imagine, that he should have credited Yoko as the songwriter, because really he got that whole concept of imagining from reading her book Grapefruit, which
Wow.
included that a lot.
Yeah.
So Yoko said, "Well, that's okay, John. You dedicated the album to me and everything." And John was happy to hear that, but he said, "No, I should have made you the co-songwriter as well," which was
Oh,
really
that's
cool to hear him say.
yeah. So how long did the interview last?
Hours.
Wow. Okay.
And
That's
it
great.
kept going on. And even as it was winding to a close, because Yoko had gotten calls saying that the limo and driver that was supposed to take them to their recording session that evening wasn't going to be able to. And she asked our guys if we could take her and John to the recording studio. They were the ones who were going back to the West Coast that night. So they were going to be on their way to the airport. I was staying in New York that night. And they said, "Yeah, sure." So we kind of had to wind up, even though we'd finished the interview, we had to wind up just the friendly
The
talking more.
visit.
And it was really cool because we took pictures, and let me get you the picture that I took with John
Yeah. What a
and
priceless
Yoko.
picture. Oh,
And
wow. Yep. There it is.
it was used on my book cover, the
It
black
was.
and white
Mm-hmm.
version, but this is the
Yeah.
color version, and I love this photo so much, and it's really cool. And so I have that, and of course, I should say I also have my photo with Paul and Linda McCartney
Yes,
too,
you do. Right. So the
sitting
listeners
next to
that are
each other in
just
my living room.
hearing this on Apple or Spotify, you may want to check it out on the YouTube because then you'll see those as well.
Yeah.
So you said goodbye to them, and I understand from your book that you were expecting to meet up with them in 2 weeks in San Francisco.
Right. Before we said goodbye, we made plans, since we all felt we were friends, to get together because they were going to be in San Francisco on their way to Hawaii. And John and Yoko said, "Let's all have dinner at Yoko's favorite Japanese restaurant in San Francisco." And I was super excited, not
Oh
just
yeah.
because I love sashimi and sushi, but because I couldn't wait to talk to them just about friendly stuff, about relationships, and get clues on how to have a good one. And I wanted to talk to John more about everything we had in common: our time spent on Bali, the fact that we were both unraised by our father and had
Mm-hmm.
dysfunctional family upbringings. And unfortunately, we never got to get together
Yeah.
because, of course, John was assassinated.
So you said so now they're leaving in the car with your counterparts and they're going back to the airport, but they're dropping them off at the recording studio and you hug goodbye. Tell
Well,
us.
before that happened,
Okay. Mm-hmm.
I walked out, and then the guys I was with walked out while John and Yoko were getting ready to bring
Okay.
stuff to their recording studio session. And as I walked out, this guy came up to me and said, "Did you talk to him? Did you get his autograph? What'd he say?" And I
Oh
looked at
wow.
him
Yeah.
and I'm thinking, what a creepy guy. And he started bugging the guys I was with too. And so the Warner Brothers executive gave him a copy of Double Fantasy and said, "Here, John will come out and sign this for you." So he
Wow.
thought that would make him stop
Would
bothering
appease him.
me and
Yeah.
people.
Yeah. What was the vibe? You got this aggressive vibe from him? Was he how,
Well, first John came out and signed it for him,
okay.
and then John and Yoko went over to the limo with the guys, and we hugged goodbye and said, "Oh, can't wait to see you again in a couple weeks." And they drove off, and I turned around to start walking to my friend's office, who I was going to have dinner with that night. And as I turned around, I immediately started getting followed and bugged by that same creepy guy who kept saying over and over
Oh my
again,
gosh.
"Did you talk to him? Did you get his autograph? What'd he say? What'd he say? What'd he say?" And he wouldn't leave me alone. And he followed me for blocks. And I
Oh
kept turning
my.
around and trying to get rid of him and acting like I was going to smack him. But of course I didn't. I thought, wow, what I should do is go back to the Dakota and tell the security department there that this guy is really obnoxious and he's bothering people and they should get rid of him. And I didn't, because I was afraid when I did that he would just follow me and bother me more and more. So
Right. Right.
unfortunately, I didn't. because what's
Yeah.
really sad is had they gotten it from me to get rid of him, they probably would have called the police because they would have realized that he had a gun in the pocket of the coat he was wearing, which I didn't
Oh
realize.
my. Right, right.
Anyway, I finally got this guy to stop following me because I kept walking further and further, and he apparently didn't want to. So I ran off and went to my friend's office and told him all about my incredible interview. And then we went out to dinner, and then we went back to my friend's apartment, and he opened the door saying, "You're going to hear the radio because I leave it on in case somebody tries to break in. Then they'll think that I'm here, so they'll go
Right.
away and break in somewhere else." So he opened the door and the music was on for 2 seconds. And all of a sudden, a reporter came on singing, "John Lennon has been shot and he's in the hospital." And
Oh
he named
my
the
gosh.
hospital. And I screamed and I immediately ran out into the middle of the street, grabbed a cab, and went to the Roosevelt Hospital and got out of the cab and saw through the big glass door Yoko in the lobby holding on to a friend and crying hysterically. And I knew just looking at her
Oh
that
no.
I shouldn't go in because I would obviously remind her of the fact that they wouldn't have been in New York that day. They would have been in Hawaii and the West Coast, but they stayed in New York just to do the interview.
Goodness.
Yeah, it was
Wow.
really awful. So I didn't go in and I just looked at her and saw how hard she was crying. And I realized, oh my God, John wasn't just shot, he was killed. I just had that feeling. So I immediately went to the phone booth right next door and called the RKO network in New York and told them what was going on and that I was pretty sure that John was actually dead. And they said, "Oh, well, come here immediately." And so I did, and I spent the entire night doing interviews for them with reporters and radio stations and everything all over the country and actually all over the world.
Right. That must have been such a surreal night. You had just been sitting with him. You had just been talking to him.
Well, and
And
then the
then,
freaky
yeah.
thing was that in, you know, really, really late at night, we turned on the TV to see if the TV station reporters had updated. And sure enough, they said, yes, sad to say that John Lennon was shot and killed. And they arrested the guy, the assassin, who admitted doing it. And they showed him. And I looked at
Oh my
it and I
gosh.
went, oh my God, that's the guy who followed me. That's the guy that I didn't report to the
Right.
security
Yeah.
people at the Dakota. And I have immediately felt guilty and have for the last 45 years that I didn't report him or
Oh,
even
that's a
notice he
lot
was
to hold
carrying a
on
gun.
to. Yeah, that's a lot to hold on to, Lori. Wow. I mean, I could understand though, you don't want to make a big deal out of it if it's not, and you don't want to, cause this whole ruckus. But then again, oh my God, who knew? So when you saw that, you must have been just, yeah, completely shocked.
And
Did they ever
crying.
say, yeah, I bet. And why did he shoot him? What was ever really the reason? Did anybody ever really get clarity on that?
First of all, I should tell you, I never say his name
Right.
and I never talk about him other than telling people how creepy he was to me because I don't want to give him the publicity.
Yeah,
So I
absolutely.
won't talk about that.
Yeah.
He was
Okay,
just
that
a
makes sense.
horrible, creepy person.
Oh my goodness. Yeah. Horrible. So, wow, my goodness. What an just a shocking day that was for you.
Yes.
Unbelievable. Yeah. So, have you, now that it's been this long, I mean, have you been able to kind of come to terms with it? Is the guilt still, because I understand that feeling of taking it on, but of course it wasn't anything you did, but has it gotten easier to reconcile?
I've tried to feel a lot less guilty, and everybody who's interviewed me, especially on television, has said, "Laurie, you've got to get over it."
Mm,
And I've tried, but I never will.
mhm,
It's just
mhm.
something, I may feel a little less guilty, but still, I feel that I could have possibly gotten rid of that guy and maybe
Mm,
made it so John wasn't shot and killed. And I
right.
feel terrible. And I also feel that's why Yoko probably has never gotten in touch with me again because
Mm,
she feels that my team and I were responsible, like I said, for them still being in New York when they shouldn't have
right.
been, and that I personally was responsible for not reporting that really creepy guy.
Oh, how horrible to think that. Yeah. Wow. That's a lot to bear. My goodness. Is that a noise coming? What is that? I'm hearing something.
I think that was a helicopter outside my
Oh,
window.
okay. Okay. Wasn't sure.
Sorry.
Very interesting, though. Right. So, since then, tell me a little bit what you have been up to. You've written this book, and people can get the book on Amazon, and that's where I got it. What's the best way for them to reach out to you and kind of what you're doing now?
Well, they should go to my website, my book's
Okay.
website, which is confessionsofarockandrollnamedropper.com, and they can see not only so many podcasts and interviews and reviews and my bio and everything, but also places to purchase it, both online and bookstores all over the country, all over the world, especially in the UK, Waterstones bookstores and Barnes and Noble in the US, and all over as well. And the cool thing about writing my book was I knew that it would be really, really hard for me to write my memoir, because something I realized was that unless you've kept a daily diary for your entire life and written down what goes on with you every day of your life, which unfortunately I never did, writing a memoir is really hard. So
Yeah.
writing a memoir was very difficult. Plus, I was so busy working in TV and video production and everything that I really didn't have time until the pandemic hit. And when COVID hit in 2020, finally TV production was out of business for a while. So I thought, I'm going to try it now. And I did until I started working again in a few months. I immediately started writing my memoir and coming up with everything that I think I needed to come up with and telling all the details. And well, you said you really liked my book, and other people
Yes.
who've read it say, well, usually when we read books, we just read a few pages at a time. But with your book, we wanted to read the whole thing at once because it was
Right.
so fascinating and everything and well written. So that makes me feel
It
really
does.
good.
It has this, there's like a vibrancy about the way you tell the stories because you can just hear that you were just this, wide, young girl loving life and this industry you've landed in. And it definitely resonates from the
Thank
book. Yeah, it definitely does. If this may be a tough question, and I don't want to put you on the spot. If it's too tough, let me know and we can just ignore me. But I'm thinking, and I know it's like, of course, you can't speak for John Lennon, but having met him more than most of us have for sure, what do you think his message to today's world would be? When he and Yoko wrote Imagine, I mean, they definitely had a world in mind. What any thoughts do you think that he would say if he were here today, or that he'd want us to know?
Well, I think he'd probably still be making music, and probably with his son Sean, and also his first son with his first wife Julian, because they
Hmm.
both continued making music.
Did they both? I know Julian did. I didn't know.
Yeah.
Okay, so they all did. Wow.
Yeah. So I'm guessing he would still be happy to be alive, and of course he'd still be with Yoko and
Right.
be a thrilled couple together.
Wow. Yep. We sure missed out on that. Thank you so much, Lori. This has been a pleasure. I really loved having you on here. Thank you for sharing your story. I know it's a hard one to tell, but it has so much impact and really helps us to kind of get a closer look. So I appreciate your time.
Thank you. And I do want to encourage people to go to Amazon and get my book, especially because it's least expensive there. They just reduced the price by 43%. So that's always a good thing to do.
So now's
And
a
when
good
you do
time.
that,
Yes.
then you can leave me a glowing 5-star book review, which would be
Of
really cool
course.
and help
Yes.
promote my book. And I should say that people who don't read or who prefer audiobooks, I did a self-voiced audiobook version, which you can find on the Amazon site too, or audible.com.
Oh,
And
fantastic.
it's really cool because you get to hear my voice and hear me talk.
Yes, and you do have that voice for
And
radio.
also,
So you have
it
a great voice.
includes quite a few of the actual interviews I did, not just
Oh,
Paul and
wow.
John and George, but so many other rock stars like the Ramones and the Talking Heads. And I just
Hmm.
did so many amazing interviews, and they're all
They're
featured
all
in
in
the
there.
book,
Fantastic.
and plenty of them are on the audio version too.
Perfect. That's great. All right. Thank you so much. Thanks for sharing your time with us.
Thank you. I had a great time. It was a pleasure.